All right, so a little while back I posted some pictures about doing a conversion on my 748 to a 996. It was this engine is out of a 2005 Ducati Monster S4R. I figured it'd be a pretty straightforward conversion, and it may be different for like the regular 996, the Tamburini design, such as this, but from the Monster S4R, quite a bit of difference. As far as the engine goes, the ECU is different, the gauge is different. I couldn't use my old gauges, so essentially when I pulled the 748 engine out and I had the 996 engine sitting right beside it, the back end here, the section where the swing arm bolts in and mounts up, the location from the top point of the engine here to the swing arm point are different, and the overall width, the back end of the engine, is also narrower for the 748, and I'm pretty sure just for the Tamburini design, the frame's different. So I had to cut, I like to say it's about an inch out of the left side of the case and about 3/4 of an inch out of the right side of the case. And also I had to move the hole, I'm quite sure it was down. It was probably about 3/4 of an inch to get everything to fit this swing arm and not modify the frame, because that's what I didn't want to do, is modify the frame. I was okay with modifying the engine because if you did want to reuse it again, say on an S4R, you could make it work, but this frame is pretty hard to find. This is the fully adjustable front, the front forks on it, the triple trees are adjustable on this. So for me, it's kind of a rare frame, and it took me a long time to get it and to find it. So I went ahead and just modified the engine case to fit. So yeah, so the engine case had to be modified. Stock exhaust worked just fine on it. I did use a radiator out of that S4R, and it is different in the way the reservoir is, because I had the expansion tank was up under here on the Tamburini design. On that bike, on the Monster, it's up under the airbox underneath here. And also your radiator cap. Well, your radiator cap to fill is over here up under the frame in front of the tank. On the Tamburini, well, with the Monster, it is actually on the side of the radiator like a normal radiator would be. Well, the problem with that is everything mounts up fine, but what doesn't work is your ram air tube on the right side of the bike, the driver's side of the bike, if you will. The ram air tube will hit that, so I had to cut, I think it was about 3 inches deep, you know. In this section, I cut about 3 inches, and it was probably 2 inches up on the bottom side of it to clear the radiator cap. So that was one obstacle to overcome. And like I said, the ECU is different. The old ECU was up under the tail section here, while on the Monster, it's on the side, and it's a complete different ECU. Now, I don't know where that changed over, but on that 05 S4R, it is a different ECU. They're not even compatible at all. So I thought, originally there would be just basically an engine in, engine out, but I also had to figure in for putting the ECU in there, and I couldn't relocate. You could relocate the ECU up in the tail section. I'm pretty sure you could, but there's a lot of wires and there's a lot of stuff to go wrong and get correct there. So it was easier for me just to mount it on the other side of the throttle bodies and build a bracket to mount it up under there. So that was another thing I had to overcome. The stock gauges for the 748, 916, 996, and I think the 998 as well, it wouldn't work with this setup as well, because different wiring harness, different ECU, all that. And also the Speedo drive is driven off the front tire, as the 748 was. It's driven off of the rear hub, right where the brake caliper bolts in, the bracket that the actual brake caliper sets on. So luckily that was a complete bike, so I could use every bit of the parts off of that bike to make this one complete. But so I essentially had to split that apart, the eccentric hub, and take the mounting bracket off, put this one on with the sensor, and also had to change out the rear brake rotor itself, because this rear brake rotor is not only larger, also it does have pickup points, magnetic pickup points for the Speedo sensor on the back end. Anything else? I did change out the throttle bodies, and I've seen that the throttle bodies are different sizes. I measured what came off of the S4R and what was on the 748, unless that engine somehow had to have changed, it's identical. The throttle body openings and the throats are the same. The intakes are the same. Where the ram air tubes click in, everything was the same. So luckily, I could use that. There was no big issues because on the other engine, well, this engine, the throttle bodies, rain had leaked down in there and shut the front throttle body, and it had rusted it shut, and it had ruined the shaft, and it was just, it was going to be too much work, and I couldn't really reuse it. So I just used this off the 748. I did swap over the injectors. I don't think it would make any difference because I think they are the same injectors. I think the only difference is how long it fires the injector and for the duration. I think that's a difference like ECU. The other question is, you know, I do have a question for some of you guys who might know this. I need to get a tuner for this because I had a PC3 for the 748, but as far as I know, it will not work on this engine here because not only is it different ECU, but it's a different engine as well. But I do need to get a power program or something like that because I am running a different air filter setup, and I debaffled the exhaust, the stock exhaust on it. So it may be running a little bit lean. That's probably the next thing I'll do is put an air fuel meter in it and plumb it into the exhaust pipes. They do have the bungs that you can take out and put the sensors in there. And the only other thing that I added to it that this engine didn't have, but this engine did have, but I had to put it in a different location, was I also did use that oil cooler because the stock 748 here in the States, and mine was a bi-posto. It did not have the oil cooler in the front. But in addition to that, I also did add in a mechanical oil pressure gauge. That way I can actually see. I know it's got a dummy light, the red light that comes on until it builds up pressure and the light comes on, but I always like to see a mechanical connection there. And I did it on the feed side, on the left side of the bike, driver's side, if you will, where the top feed line to the cylinder head goes up in there. I basically plumbed into there and put the oil pressure gauge in there. The only other thing I'm going to add is, like I said, is an air fuel ratio, dual sensor pickup. That way I can kind of monitor it like at idle, mid throttle, full throttle. I can kind of see where it's at, just to be safe. I did use the 44 tooth sprocket off of that bike. I'm not sure if that was stock. Mine was 41 that was originally on this bike, and it does make a difference. It has a lot better initial acceleration. Top end, I don't know. I haven't ran it at top end yet, but of course, if you gear up in the rear, it's going to bring your top end down, but bring your acceleration up. It's effectively moving, your power band around. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The key switch had to be replaced as well because this one has an immobilizer in it. That took a little bit of work to get it to fit the fuel tank and to fit the front steering, the steering stabilizer. Other than that, just a lot of work. It was a lot more than I thought it was going to be, but well worth it. Now that I've rode it, it's a lot better than it was. A lot more power, a lot different power, a lot torqueier, and satisfied so far. But a lot of work to get it there. So if any of you guys probably know, the 996 engine coming out of the Massimo Tamburini frame design as this, it probably directly bolts in, but this one wasn't. So a word of caution: if you buy an S4R monster thinking you can just directly bolt the engine in, it's not going to be that easy. So just a heads up. But yeah, I'm very happy with it, and hopefully she stays together. And I still have my backup 748 engine. I may do a little refresh on it. I've checked it over, and everything seems to be in really good shape. So I got lucky there. So yeah, we'll see where it goes from here. I hope you guys appreciate it. A lot of work.